There's been a lot of talk over the last couple of days on what the Chicago Bulls draft strategy is. Rumored to take now a guard in the first round of this draft. What does that mean for how they view the current roster of the Bulls? We're going to talk a little bit about that and how their draft strategy is really going to tell us a lot about their real evaluation of this roster. We also have a free agent pending that could make a lot of sense for the Chicago Bulls. It could be one of the players that may be easier to get with the less resistance. We're going to talk about all those things plus more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Eric Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. I want to talk about the Bulls draft strategy, right? Or however you view that, right? I don't know if we can really call it a draft strategy yet. Right now, we have a lot of rumors around the Chicago Bulls, and the recent rumor of the Bulls zeroing in on Igor Dimon and what that could actually mean for this team. Right now, I want to talk about it. One of the tells that's as old as as old as time is that best player available versus position of the need. Right, that's always what kind of every team is going into it, unless you're at a certain level. Right, if you're already a team that's a contender, you're then at that point probably just going fit. Right, or you just going best player available and letting it fit out. Right, because of because if you can get a star with already having a star-laden team, you do that, right? The Bulls sit in an interesting place to where they aren't necessarily sure on exactly what they have in their roster. Despite what some more of the stands would tell you, right? They don't have a star yet. Josh Giddey is not a star yet. He's not. He's just not. You got to do it more consistently. Coby is not a star yet. He has to do it more consistently. Matas is definitely not a star yet, even though he could eventually get there. They're not there yet, right? So if the Bulls are going into this draft, and the one thing that the Bulls do need is they need a star. More than anything, more than any singular position, they need a star, right? And while, us as fans, we see it. We know that the Bulls need a big, a center, a defensive center. We all talk about it. We all see it, right? But if you have a chance to get a player that you legitimately see has that star level upside for you, you owe it to the place of your team to do that, right? And I think that's going to tell us a lot about what this team does, right? And I link that all to the Igor Dimon kind of rumors and news around Igor and the Bulls, having him on their board and things like that. I think ultimately it tells you a lot about how they really view where this roster currently is. If you do go guard, right, it means a couple of different things. A, it could mean that you're not as sure about this guard rotation of Coby and Coby and Josh Giddey, that you're not as sure on them being your starting backcourt going forward, whether that is because of financial reasons, whether it's because of fit, whether it's because of whatever it is, right? That you're not as sure on that. And if you're not, and you take a guard and you see a guard being the best player available, you set yourself up to have some insurance policies. That could be what that is, right? I think one of the most common things that people think are when they hear guard is that the Bulls are going to immediately turn around and try to flip Coby in the same draft. And while that's a possibility, right? Teams like the Orlando Magic, who came calling, who still have a reported interest in Coby White, right? Yeah, you could try to flip him in the same draft for the 16th overall pick, but I also think that this Bulls team could very well draft a guard and use that to say, hey, we're going to give them to the trade deadline, maybe halfway through the season, and see how much of how they ended the season is real, how much of that chemistry is well, how much can this backcourt really play together, and if they do it, great, right? If not, we're going to move Coby at the trade deadline. We're not going to worry about the contract extension. We'd already have Josh Giddey locked into a new contract at that point in time, and we may have drafted somebody that we feel is a more natural fit in that backcourt with Coby White. Again, not things that I'm saying necessarily is going to happen, but it is an option there, right? Or you could do what most Bulls fans think. Draft your guard, immediately turn around and flip Coby White in the same draft, try to get back into this draft, and then get your big, because either way, you still do need a big, but you do have a second-round pick. There are going to be some players that fall down to the second round here. By the way, do y'all see some of the mocks now starting to have Colin Murray Boyles going to the second round? Yeah, and after some of the hate I got around my doubt around Colin Murray Boyles, if he falls to the second round, just know the victory lap that I'm going to take on y'all is going to be ridiculous. Now, I do think that some of those mocks are reacting to some of the draft doubt around Colin Murray Boyles. I don't think he goes to the second round. It would be crazy value if he does. That would be an amazing value pick if he falls to the second round. But not to get sidetracked on that. But I say that to say this. The mocks are all over the place. And that's part of the reason why, for Bulls fans that have asked, like, okay, why would the Bulls put out fillers or say that they're interested in Igor if that's not really where their interest lies? When you look at a guy, for example, like Rasheer Fleming, he's gone from being a player that most mocks had slated to go in the 20s to he's starting to rise up to a lottery pick. Derek Queen, a guy that at the end of the NCAA season, most people said was going to go top 6, top 8, maybe at the lowest. Now people are saying that he could fall to the middle of the first round, depending on how that falls. Thomas Sorber, a guy that a lot of Bulls fans like around here. Now some mocks have him going from 18th to inside the lottery. So it really comes down to you're trying to position yourself to put out things that teams that maybe think that a player that they want to get lower is not going to be there, and then you teams pull the trigger earlier, things like that. Now there's a really high possibility that Igor Dimon is not even on the board when the Bulls pick, right? There's a chance that he can go as early, I think, as 8th to the Brooklyn Nets, and so you see what happens there. But, overall, what the Bulls do with this draft is going to tell us truly a lot about how they view this team, right? If you go best player available at guard, and you see that as a guard, that tells us that you're not sure that you have stars and that you have a star on this team yet. And that's perfectly fine. Like I said, nobody on this team is a star yet. We can talk about potential all day. I know my Josh Giddey stands. I was in a conversation with one yesterday. He has an unlimited ceiling. And I'm like, what about the defense? He could be one of the best defensive players. It's like, all right now. See, that's when you just got to know when to check out of a conversation, when people say things that are just plainly wrong. Like it's okay, right? Every player doesn't have to be perfect. You can acknowledge a player and where their faults are. Josh Giddey, defense is definitely a fault for him. And, we'll see how it goes. He worked on it last year. No doubt about it. He worked on it last year. He was an active defender as well last year, and we'll see where that goes, right? But so you got to see how those things are going to shake out. And going best player available, if that's what the Bulls do, is something that I think that you can understand. Now, I think that if the Bulls do go fit, right, and they look at Coby, Giddey, and Matas, and they try to find a player that fits with those three players, that actually could be the right thing and right path to do here, right? And that shows an investment over what you currently have and a level of belief of, if we get what this team is missing, they have the chance and the opportunity to really go further, right? And that's a big question here. And, I've always said that the people that have doubts and they say, oh, well, they did it in March. We want to see if they're going to be able to do it at the beginning of the season. That's a reasonable take, right? The people that more so on, oh my God, March doesn't matter at all, at all. We got to trade Giddey. We got to trade Coby right now because March doesn't matter at all. That's a little bit more of a radicalized term, right? Or stance. But either way, right? I think either way that you're looking at it is that's the two kind of varying sides that you sit on this with. And it's a tough decision to make. It's a tough decision, especially when you don't have a whole lot of data. We basically have one season of Josh Giddey in this uniform. And part of that season was, you're still trying to play Zach LaVine. And, it didn't necessarily fit with some of the pieces, right? So you're trying to evaluate this team at a different level. You're trying to kind of jumpstart that and figure out what you're going to get out of that. And that's the thing that's telling to me, right? So the Bulls draft strategy, best player available, position of need, whatever they end up seeing here, and maybe they see it as one and the same. Maybe the best player on the board when the Bulls draft is also a position of need. And I think that's a thing to watch when it all comes down to it as well. Like, it's your draft strategy tells you a lot. It can tell you a lot, right? And so the Bulls have, as of right now, all we've heard is the Igor Dimon news, right? We've had the players that they've sat down and had meetings with at the draft combine, which you try to meet with as many players as you possible at the draft combine. But I think once we start getting in players for workouts, that's going to be a big telling part about this next phase of this draft, right? We're a little under a month away now from the NBA draft. As teams start bringing in players for private workouts, that's where you're going to see the meaningful risers, because once they see this team, the training staff gets to look at these players up close and in person. Of course, they're going to get the medicals as part of those meetings as well. That's when you're going to see a lot of telling things about some of these prospects, right? And I think that's an important part. So it could still end up being Igor Dimon. It could still end up being Thomas Sorber. It could still end up being Asa Newell, right? It could still end up being one of those guys as the private workouts start. And that's really the telling part. Now, I would love if in those private workouts, we still have Peter Patton as being part of those, but we don't have that luxury anymore. It is what it is. Peter Patton's gone. It is what it is there. But we still do have guys in Wes Unseld Jr. We still have guys in Dan Craig who've been really good at player development, right? We still have the understudy of Peter Patton. I always forget his name. That's my fault. I'll be better on remembering his name going forward. That's now the head of the player development department. How those guys evaluate the talent that's in this draft and when they come in, I think it's going to be a really big telling part. Billy Donovan's probably going to be in there as well, and as the head coach, he should be, right? It's his system, it's his team, it's his game plan, those type of things, but we shall see what the future does hold for the Bulls. I think it's going to be telling. It's going to be really interesting to watch how all this shakes out for this Bulls team because I have some big questions. What are the Bulls doing, man? What are the Bulls doing? And that's something that we all won't know anytime soon, man. And there's going to be a lot more draft rumors between here and the actual NBA draft, a lot of them. So we could see here guard now, where a lot of people are thinking the Bulls are going to draft guard. That could very well shift to where the Bulls are drafting a small forward. They're drafting a center. They're drafting a power forward, right? The news and rumors aren't going to stop anytime soon. That's just the place that we're in right now. So we'll see what ends up happening. I do love watching how the draft board is falling and rising because now a guy like Danny Wolf, right, who some Bulls fans are talking about at number 12, is falling into the second round in some mocks. Colin Murray-Boyle is falling into the second round for some Bulls fans. Hugo Gonzalez went from being a second-round pick to the end of the first round to now being back in the middle of the second round, right? Like, these are all guys that I've been watching, like Will Reed, Will Riley. He's gone from a player at the end of the first round to right outside the lottery now via some mocks. And basically what that tells you is that the mocks are all over the place, right? Cedric Howard has gone from a player out going into the lottery to back down now at the end of the first round, which that seems fishy. Seems like his stock is just on the rise. Carter Bryant, another guy that's gone from a lottery pick to now is being talked about at the end of the first round, right? So like you're seeing the wide swings, and part of that is what they're hearing from teams, but part of what they're hearing from teams is posturing, right? So just watch it, and who the Bulls bring in for workouts, I think is going to be really, really important in all of this for sure. But let's go ahead and get into the next topic for this Bulls team, which we're going to be talking about the Chicago Bulls and a player that's a free agent. So I want to talk a little bit about Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Now, this is a guy that right now is playing really well in the Western Conference Finals. He's averaging like 15 points per game while playing really good defense, right? And I want to talk about him for a couple of different reasons. So this wasn't initially pointed out by me. Austin McGee wrote a great article on why Nickeil Alexander-Walker could end up being a really good acquisition for the Chicago Bulls. Now, he is a wing guard combo, right, when it comes down to it. But he is one of the most underrated wings. He's averaging 15 points. He's made 12 three-pointers in 4 games against the OKC Thunder. And when you look at him as well in his skill set, right, the defensive ability from him is what I really like a whole lot about him. When you look at how he's guarding, like the players that he's guarded so far in the playoffs, let's just talk about this for a second, right? He's guarding Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and in the possessions where he guarded Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's only shooting 3 for 8, right? And he has 3 turnovers on Nickeil Alexander-Walker guarding him. Now, when you also look at the previous contest, the previous series that he's played in, he played against Luka Doncic and Jimmy Butler, which he guarded those guys, and he held those guys to 27% shooting. 27% shooting, right? And when you look at the Minnesota Timberwolves as well, they are 30th in salary cap space in the summer of 25. They have $93 million over the salary cap, and they're already a team that's going to be really up close to it and not having a lot of lateral movement. So even though that they have the bird rights on Nickeil Alexander-Walker, he's definitely somebody that could be gotten, and you don't really have to worry about the team matching. And now they could look at it and say, F the salary cap, we're going to get what we can here, right? But when you look at it, they have Julius Randle, Naz Reid, 2 players that could take precedence over signing over Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I think that this guy is in a prime position for you to get a guy. Now, the question and the thing that's a little bit concerning here is that, of course, guys that go on teams that go on Western Conference final runs or playoff runs, they tend to get a little bit overpaid. And that tends to not be something that always holds off. Sometimes you get a diamond in the rough, like an Alex Caruso. Excuse me. You get a guy like an Alex Caruso who ends up playing amazingly well, right? And ends up living up to the hype that they had in a finals run or whatever else. but you have to add some questions there, right? So far through the playoffs, he's averaging 8.9 points per game. But like I said, in the conference finals, he's averaging 15 points per game. He's doing that on 51% shooting from the field, 48% shooting from three. If you take that and look at his regular season stats, there are more towards his overall playoff numbers. 9.4 points per game, 43% shooting, 38% shooting from three. Now, the question is, and I know a lot of people are going to have this is, all right, but Hayes, what is Nickeil Alexander-Walker bringing you that Ayo Dosunmu is not if Ayo's healthy? I see you on that one, right? And this will come down to, do the Bulls want to do something similar to what the New York Knicks have as far as having a lot of versatile wing defenders? Because we don't have that right now, right? You look at our on-ball defenders. Ayo Dosunmu is an on-ball defender. Lonzo Ball, if he's healthy, he's an on-ball defender for the Chicago Bulls. Other than that, we're sorely missing on-ball defenders, right? Now, hopefully we get a big in here who's able to help some of that, especially in a zone defense with rim protection and switchability and things like that. But I think guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, guys that are solid offensively, really solid defensively, that also can help stand up for you if need be, right? As far as if you need to call on them to do more things offensively, that they could end up helping you with that one. I think that those functional signings are really good, right? I also think you can get Nickeil Alexander-Walker for maybe a 2-year deal that puts you in a place of like, if it doesn't work out, this roster takes a different spot, maybe we can do some other things, right? So Nickeil Alexander-Walker mentioned it. Like I said, Austin McGee originally wrote an article on why he would be a really good fit for the Chicago Bulls, but digging into more of his numbers, I could definitely see the fit here, right? He's still young at 26 years old, brings that combination of youth but experience that AK has talked about liking, right? And he's a guy that really over the course of his NBA career, there's only been a few times that he's had minutes, but if you look at it, he averaged over 20 minutes his second year in New Orleans. He gave you 11 points per game. That was at his second year in the league. His third year in New Orleans and third year in the league, 26 minutes, 13 points on 37% shooting, not the best, but 2 assists, almost a block, a steal per game, right? 3 rebounds per game, 3 assists per game, right? That's really good production from, again, a role player. I'm not saying that you have to sign him here for him to be a feature part, but I think guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker are what help your system really hum. After his third year, he didn't get another season of averaging 20 minutes or more until the 2023-24 season with the Minnesota Timberwolves, where he averaged 8 points on 43% shooting, 39% shooting from deep. He basically replicated those same numbers this year with Minnesota, getting 25 minutes per game, but going up to 9.4 points per game with only taking an extra shot. So I think those things really are looking pretty good for Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I do really like him as a potential free agent target by the Bulls. Not saying that he needs to be a day one target or anything like that, but I think when you look at guys that can come in, you can get for not a lot of money because you're still trying to save and maintain some cap flexibility for the summer of 26, I think that he can help you a whole lot. But staying in that same realm, right? We haven't done an actual draft breakdown and analysis in a minute, so we're going to get back to that. But staying with guys kind of in that same realm that I do want to talk about that could be a draft prospect for the Chicago Bulls is Noah Penda. This is a guy that's out of France. We haven't talked a whole lot about. I think I mentioned him on an episode before. Now, he's another guy that the mocks are starting to love. Initially mocked to go towards the end of the first round and even into the second round. He's now a guy that's starting to be mocked to go maybe right outside the lottery. But why am I talking about him here? Because I do believe that there is a chance that the Bulls do make a trade to get back into this draft. And I think it could be in the realm and area of a Noah Penda as well. And if they do that, listen, this is a guy, 6'8", only 20 years old, 225 pounds. He's listed as a guy that can play shooting guard, but I look at him and I say, this seems like a modern NBA wing to me. That he can play the 3 or the 4. I like the potential of his fit also next to a guy like Matas Buzelis, right, which is something that I am personally still looking at in this draft, is guys that can fit with Matas long term, right? I think that he really does bring that. You look at some of his comps, Nicholas Batum, Najee Marshall, James Johnson. There's some of the comps for this guy I really do like when it comes down to him. Really good off-ball defense. He can play and guard multiple positions, which I think is really important when you have a backcourt like Giddey and Coby, which they may not be the backcourt, but I think having guys that can guard multiple positions are important. I think Matas is going to project to be that guy as well. If you can have your 3, your 4, and your 5 all able to switch and guard multiple positions, even if your backcourt's a little bit weaker defensively, that actually helps you out a little bit as well. Now, of course, the question is going to be that he played over in France. And foreign prospects, it really depends on how you're going to do it, right? Some people have even said that his defense is kind of more to like a Andre Roberson. If you guys remember when he had his really good. He was a really good defender at a time. Now, he didn't have much offensive upside. I do think that Noah Penda has more upside than that for sure, right? But he's not hugely athletic, but he's athletic enough. He's really strong as well to it. He understands how to defend in space and move in space as well, which is important with the Bulls' fast-paced system and things like that, right? I don't think he'll ever be a full-time power forward, but I do think depending on the lineup that you run him at, you can definitely do that for him as well. And I do think he can guard power forwards as well. One of the biggest questions for him is, how is that offense going to work with him at the next level? He does not really have a three-point shot or threat yet, right? He has improved on it, but it's still one of the things that's a work in progress, right? So there's the thing for it. And you still have Matas, who's still working on his three as well, right? But he does have a really good form. I do think the form is there for him. And keep in mind, this is a guy that initially people were thinking was 6'6". Like, I think whether he's grown or whatever, like 6'7", almost 6'8". Really good positional size there. And I think the strength really pays off to him as well. I like this guy a whole hell of a lot. It just depends on where you draft him at. If the Bulls do trade back into the first round in this draft, whether it be with the Magic and getting their 16th pick or it's at the end of the first round, if Noah Penda is there on the board, I would seriously consider the Chicago Bulls taking him, and I think that could actually end up working out for the Bulls. But you guys can let me know how you feel on everything down below. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.